Good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar, Gain a Directional Edge using OptionsPlay. My name is Scott Green, Marketing Director with Regal Securities, and shortly I'll be introducing today's presenter, Tony Zhang of OptionsPlay, who does all of our webinars. And today we'll be going over topics such as the top-down approach, relative strength and trend analysis. Tony will show live trading examples on the trading platform using OptionsPlay, and more. For those who are unfamiliar with OptionsPlay, it's a tool highly integrated on your trading platform that helps you with the analysis, strategy, and research for trading options. And after I introduce Tony and he presents on Gain a Directional Edge, we'll have about 15 minutes or so for Q&A. If you have any questions along the way, please submit them through the chat box in the webinar platform, or you can submit them through the Q&A box, and we'll get to as many as we can at the end. So now I just want to share this disclaimer. The types of securities, forms, and research tools used in this webinar are for demonstration purposes only and should not be considered a recommendation by Regal Securities or a solicitation or an offer to buy or sell any options. This webinar is being recorded and is not intended to be used for individual tax, legal, or investment planning advice. So with that being said, now I want to introduce Tony, who, like I said, does all of our OptionsPlay webinars, does a great job. He's a chief strategist over at OptionsPlay and an options expert. He brings over 12 years of experience in the financial services industry. He leads the OptionsPlay development team that has led to the creation of some of those innovative tools in options trading and analysis. OptionsPlay is their flagship product, and it's currently embedded with several major sell-side brokerage firms. And Tony has helped build up the product suite for both the institutional and retail markets. Tony also is a regular presenter at many trading conferences, and some of the ones upcoming are the Raymond James Advisory Conference in Houston in October, the Traders Expo in Las Vegas next month, in 2 months in November, and the Canadian Option Education Day in Toronto also in November. And once again, if you want to follow along on your trading platform or are unfamiliar where it is, it's across the tabs, across the top of the tabs on your trading platform. You'll see a tab called OptionsPlay, and there you can access it. And so from here, I'll let Tony take it over. Tony?
So if you just print this out and send it in. Yeah, I mean, I see that you've done it for 2017, and I see you've done it for 2000.
Tony, are you there?
Yeah, sorry. I couldn't share my screen before. Okay, I'm here.
Okay, great.
Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you everyone for taking the time out this afternoon. Apologies for the technical difficulties. My name is Tony Zhang. I'm the chief strategist here at OptionsPlay, and today we're going to talk about how to gain a directional edge. I think this is actually quite a timely topic, being given the amount of volatility and the amount of news that we've seen recently driving the markets up and down. It's been quite choppy, and I think a lot of people are at loss as to kind of where the market is headed and kind of what is the directional view of the market, as well as the sectors and individual stocks that you're trading. So what we want to present here today is the set of tools that are available to you free of charge at Regal Securities OptionsPlay, and show you how you can utilize the tools that we provide you here to help cut through the noise so that you have a better reliable indicator of directional view, looking at the different tools that we have available to disseminate that information to you in an easy to digest format that you can always rely on. And then more importantly, how can you leverage that directional view into an actual options trade to look at how to profit from your directional view. So that's what we're going to walk you through here today is really understanding the tools that we have and showing you how it's able to provide you with that directional view. And also, more importantly, show you how to actually look at option trades that will profit from those directional views. Now, I'm going to take about 15 minutes to go through some slides here. I'll go through a few different things, but what I really want to spend most of my time with here today is actually showing you the real platform with some real examples, so that hopefully drive home what we're going to show you here today. So I'll start off by talking a little bit about this problem that we have, paralysis by analysis. You know, we are constantly bombarded by news. How do we actually get around that? And trend and relative strength is really one of the key ways that we utilize to determine our directional view. So I want to break down what trend analysis is, what relative strength is, and then more importantly, how do you find a directional edge using these two indicators? You know, working as a strategist over the last 13 years, I've worked with a lot of different clients looking at a lot of different strategies. So we want to show you how you can boil it down to something that's relatively simple and giving you bullish and bearish examples so that you can quickly learn how to identify bullish and bearish candidates for individual stocks. And then lastly, we'll end the session with a live analysis of some real stocks using OptionsPlay. Now, we live in this world of information and data overload now. We just simply have way too many sources, in my opinion, to get different forms of opinion. And what ends up happening is, because we have so many sources of information, it becomes almost overwhelming. So it becomes where you're not exactly sure what to look for anymore, because there's so many different things to look at. So what we propose is simply simplifying your life. And keep in mind that when we're talking about simplified, does not mean simple. We want to make sure that you still keep the fundamental or the important pieces, if you will, by simply just filtering out the noise. And we think two ways to do this is to look at overall trend and look at relative strength. Now, trend analysis is quite simple. It's trying to predict the direction based on historical data. So for any of you that have used technical analysis or have learned some charting, you might be familiar with forms of or popular ways of trend analysis, such as moving average, trend lines, even channels. These are the types of things that you can draw on your chart that gives you an idea as far as whether a stock is trending higher, trending lower, or perhaps trending sideways. And this is really just looking at historical patterns and drawing them out into the future and saying that, you know, what's happened historically is likely going to happen in the future. And this is useful in helping you identify and filter out the day-to-day noise, looking at the longer-term patterns. The second thing we want to look at is relative strength. This is really where we're comparing the performance of a stock comparing that to the market. And there's simple ways to do this, like simply taking the stock price and comparing it to the S&P and seeing if it's outperforming the S&P or underperforming the S&P to say whether a stock is strong or weak. But there are more robust methodologies, and there's plenty of these ranking methodologies, or any of the ranking methodologies really take relative strength as their fundamental underlying. And these are, as many of you might be familiar with, the IBD investment business dailies rankings. You might be familiar with Zacks rankings, or stock charts rank. These are all similar methodologies trying to give you an idea as far as what are the strongest stocks in the market, what are the weakest stocks in the market, and how does every other stock in between compare with each other. And the idea with relative strength is simply to buy the strongest stocks and short the weakest stocks. That historically, as when we rank using these types of indicators, has shown performance in the long run. So what we want to propose is a combination of these two, trend analysis and relative strength, to help you simplify and help you cut through the noise and really focus on what really matters, which is what the trend is and what the strength is of each stock. And that alone will help you determine a directional view. Now, how do you actually gain a directional edge from these two indicators? Now, as a strategist, I've worked with clients from just about every single background: fundamental, technical, statistical, even clients that looked at astronomy to help them determine what stocks to look at and what direction they want to trade them in. However, the one thing that I've noticed over the last 13 years of working with clients is that it really doesn't matter as much as to what type of analysis you do, but more importantly, how consistently you follow the same approach was what set good traders apart from the rest. And what we propose is simplifying your life, because that allows you to really stick to one set of rules day in and day out without constantly changing. Because and I experienced this myself as a technical trader, of constantly trying to learn different indicators, different ways to use the indicators, and I was constantly learning. However, what I wasn't doing was consistently applying one methodology day in and day out. And when you're applying different strategies and different ways of trading, you tend to find inconsistent results. So one of the ways that we want to help you gain consistency is by simplifying the process of figuring out trend analysis and relative strength. Because with moving averages and with trend lines with channels, is that there's lots of different moving averages you can use. There's also lots of ways to interpret that moving average. And drawing trend lines is quite subjective. Two people looking at the same chart could draw very, very different trend lines. So how do we all have one unified methodology? So what we did is we took 3 different moving averages, and we took the combination of the data that the 3 moving averages gave us and provided a simple to read trend analysis. Instead of telling you to look at the moving average and interpret it, we do that work for you, and we tell you what the 1 month and 6 month trend of a stock is, and we tell you whether it's bullish, bearish, or neutral. And you see it on your OptionsPlay screen on the upper right hand corner in the security analysis panel that tells you what the 1 month and 6 month trend of a stock currently is. This means that you don't have to figure out which moving average to add. You don't have to figure out how to interpret that moving average. It does all of that work for you and simply gives you a reliable reading. And it uses the same methodology day in and day out. So you know that you're not using a 200-day today and the 550-day the next day. It's always going to consistently use the exact same moving averages and interpret it the exact same way. Second of all, what we do is for relative strength, we calculate for you a technical score. This ranges from a score of 1 to 10. 1 are the weakest stocks in the market, 10 are the strongest stocks in the market. And this really allows you to quantify how strong a stock is compared to the overall market. So between these 2 indicators alone, you are able to you're able to interpret both the trend and relative strength in a very easy to digest format. And because we're doing that interpretation for you, you know you're using the same consistent methodology day in and day out. Now, how do we actually put the 2 together to gain a directional edge? And that's really where the beauty of combining these 2 come in, because as much as we like trend analysis, there are limitations to trend analysis. For example, if you have 2 stocks, if I'm looking at Micron and I'm looking at Apple, and they're both trending higher, if they're both bullish, it's really difficult to tell which one should I buy, because there's lots of bullish stocks out there. So how do I know which one's better? The one thing that trend analysis doesn't really tell you is how strong that trend is, and allowing you to compare one trend against another. Conversely, relative strength also has its limitations. Relative strength allows you to compare 2 stocks directly, one to another. So if Micron has a score of 10 and Apple has a score of 9, then I can tell you definitively that Micron is a stronger stock. However, what relative strength doesn't tell you is whether that strength is continuing to strengthen, or is it actually starting to weaken. So that's really where we suggest that you use a combination of the 2. And that's really what we're going to show you here on the next page, is how do you actually gain a directional edge using these 2 indicators. So these are actually fairly simple rules to remember, but you don't have to, I'm gonna provide these for illustrative purposes, but I'm actually going to show you some real examples that help drive this image home. So first of all, what I want to talk about is strong bullish stocks. Or the first 2, I'm going to call them trend following stocks, meaning these are classic strong bullish and strong bearish stocks. And they're pretty easy to remember, because a strong bullish stock is a stock that has strong relative strength and it exhibits bullish trends. So basically the relative strength and the trend line up with each other. That's what we consider a strong bullish stock. Conversely, on the other side, stock that has weak relative strength, so a stock that's underperforming the overall market and it's trending lower, trending bearish, these are your strong bearish stocks. So this is really for those of you that are trend followers. You like to buy stocks in the direction that they're currently trending. using the combination of trend and relative strength really give you a directional edge. Conversely, for those of you that like to trade reversals or like to trade contrarian trades, this is really where you want to look for turnaround trades. So a stock that has weak relative strength, so a stock that's underperforming the overall market, but it's exhibiting bullish trends, this is a stock that's relatively weak or underperforming the market, but is starting to turn around and starting to strengthen. So for those of you that like to try to find stocks that are maybe cheap and starting to turn around, or stocks that have been quite bearish that are starting to turn around, these are the types of candidates that you want to look for. Stocks with weak relative strength, but bullish trends. And conversely, on the other side, for stocks that have strong relative strength, but they're now exhibiting bearish trends, these are the types of stocks that you want to do. If you own these stocks, these are stocks that are starting to top. You might want to take profit on those stocks. And for those of you that are a bit more opportunistic, these are stocks that may have opportunities to short these stocks. And really leveraging options is one of the best ways to trade these types of trades, because it allows you to continue to take that directional view, however, do it with limited risk compared to just buying a stock. So these are the 4 ways that you can use the relative strength and trend analysis that we provide on OptionsPlay to quickly gain a directional view for any stock that you type in. And I'll go through, again, some examples to really help drive this image home. So lastly, how do we find, now that we've learned how to use these 2 indicators to gain a directional edge, how do we find high probability setups? How do you find trades or stocks that have a high probability of either moving higher or moving lower? And this is really where we propose a top-down approach. This is really looking at not just on the stock level, but first starting off on the market level, understanding where the market is currently trending, where the market is going, then looking at individual sectors within that market to see what are strong sectors, what are weak sectors, are they trending higher, are they trending lower? And then lastly, once you've determined a sector that you want to look at, then look at the individual stocks. So if you're looking for bullish ideas, we generally want to do this in a bullish environment where the market is moving higher like it is today. In this particular time, you want to look for stronger and bullish sectors. And I'll show you in a few minutes how to go about doing that. And once you've identified those strong and bullish sectors, you want to look for strong and bullish stocks within those sectors. So when you have all of these things lined up, that's when you have the highest probability of a stock moving higher. Conversely, on the downside, if you're looking for bearish ideas, you generally want to see that the market is at least starting to trend bearish or moving lower. Then you want to identify the weak and bearish stocks within that sector or within that market, and then look at weak and bearish stocks within that weak sector. So that's how you are able to then identify what are the stocks that have the strongest probability of that stock moving lower, because everything is aligned with that stock moving lower. So this is a really simple approach to finding high probability setups using the tools that are available to you here at OptionsPlay. So with that, what I want to do is I want to bring up some examples and actually show you some actual trades and see, what we can find here. So here's the OptionsPlay tool. For those of you that have never used it before, you can find OptionsPlay by clicking on the OptionsPlay tab. And we built this tool because we wanted a user experience that was easier to interpret than simply just looking at the option chains. When you're looking at the option chains, you don't really get a sense for direction of the stock. You certainly don't get analysis to help you determine which strike and which expiration may be better suited for you. It's difficult to compare one strike to another. That's why we created OptionsPlay, so that you can do all of those things on one screen and didn't have to go back and forth between this screen and other screens. So what we have here on the left is we have trade ideas and watch list here. These are fresh trading ideas provided for you, bullish and bearish ideas every single day. We have a watch list that is pre-built for you. There's even a sector watch list, which is what I'll use in a few seconds to show you how to rank sectors or how to determine whether a sector is strong or weak. The middle is our security analysis panel. This is designed to provide you with the trend analysis and relative strength that we just spoke about to help you quickly quantify whether a stock is bullish or bearish, and then providing you with all the underlying information such as earnings, dividends, and price action to see how everything lines up. And then once you've determined a directional view on an underlying stock, we want to show you how you can actually profit from that. Using the trading panel here, we can show you 3 bullish strategies on any stock that you're bullish on, or if you click on I'm bearish, you'll be presented with 3 bearish strategies on how to take advantage of a bearish view. So it's really designed to provide you with instant starting points that really have been optimized already to help you get to exactly where should I start, how do I compare different strategies, and then I'll walk you through the P&L simulator in a few minutes. What I want to go back to real quick is looking at some symbols and saying which symbols are strong, which sectors are weak, and looking through a bunch of different symbols to see how you can quickly use our tool to gain that directional view. Now, before I get started, I just want to say that you should take a look at the sector watch list, which is pre-built for you. It's got all 11 sectors out of the S.
Oh, Tony, looks like we lost your audio. We're getting feedback from the audience, so just give us a couple minutes, everyone, and we'll figure out what the issue is here. But Tony, we can no longer hear you.
Hello? Sorry, guys. Looks like I got kicked off there.
Hi, Tony. No problem. Okay, I can see your screen again.
Okay. Sorry, guys. So, apologies.
It looks like everyone else is responding that they can hear you. Okay.
Let me just shut this down. Okay. So, sorry about that. So, what I was saying here is that what we want to show you is the ability to pull up your sectors. So, we have a pre-built watch list for you here based on sectors. The only sector that currently doesn't have a score is the communication sector. This is a brand new sector. We don't have enough historical data on it to calculate these ranks, but we have a score for every other sector as of right now to show you which sectors are strong, which sectors are weak, so that you can quantify that. You don't have to do it by feel. You don't have to do it by looking at charts. You don't even have to pull up each individual symbol. You can just sort it by score, and I can tell you that staples, real estate, and utilities are the 3 weakest sectors in the market, while consumer discretionary, energy, healthcare, and technology are the 4 highest sectors. So this really allows you to quantify how these sectors are doing with each other so that you can quickly figure out where you should take a look. So if the markets are bullish, so as you can see, the 1-month and 6-month trend on the S&P 500 is bullish. So I'm looking for bullish opportunities. And if I see that if I'm looking for bullish opportunities, I would focus my attention on consumer discretionary, energy, healthcare, and technology. So these are the sectors that I would pay attention to. So as you can see here, if I pull up a stock like Apple, what I get is the 1-month and 6-month trend indicators are bullish. This is telling me that this stock is trending higher, and the technical score is very strong, a score of 9. So this is telling me that both the relative strength and the trend of the stock is aligned with each other. So if I'm looking at the stock, likely I'm going to select I'm bullish and look for bullish opportunities for these types of stocks. Conversely, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up my watch list here. And I typically like to sort my watch list by that score, because this allows me to quickly look at all the stocks on my watch list and see which ones are weak stocks with bearish trends, such as Goodyear Tire. As you can see, 1-month and 6-month trend on this stock is bearish. The technical score is 3, telling me this is a weak stock, underperforming the overall market. And as you can see, this clearly is a stock that has underperformed while the market has continuously moved higher over this last few months. So this is really the type of candidates that I'm be looking for if I'm looking for bearish opportunities rather. Conversely, if I'm looking at Cisco, as you can see, 1-month and 6-month trends are bullish. Technical score is 8, that tells me that this is a strong stock and it's continuing to trend higher. And the other thing you should keep an eye out for is how long something has been in a bullish trend or bearish trend for. So as you can see, it started this bullish trend here back in August 6th. This is when the trend turned higher. And as you can see, this trend indicator has remained bullish this entire time. So if you went bullish here on Cisco here on August 6th, you would have made a pretty nice return on your trade. Whether you traded stocks or options is completely up to you. But regardless of whether you trade stocks or options, you can utilize this tool to help you gain that directional view and help you maintain that directional view as you stay in this trade, and really help you quantify if this dip back, if you were long this stock back from $42, $43, and it started to pull back from 47 back to 46, the trend indicator here, as you can see, never turned negative and never turned neutral, or it just continued to stay bullish. This allows you to stay in a trade and be confident in why you should consider staying in a trade. So this really allows you to type in any stock and quickly get a feel for what's going on with the stock. So UPS, it's got a score of 6, relatively neutral stock, and you can see the 1 month and 6 month trend is bearish and neutral. So not only do you see that this is a neutral stock, it's starting to trend a little lower, you can see how that price action has changed over time. It was quite bullish for quite a bit of time from July 25th here when it made this huge move higher. It stayed bullish the entire time until just a few days ago here on September 13th, the trend started to turn around. And as you can see here on September 18th, both the 1 month and 6 month trend flipped from bullish to bearish and neutral. So this is really the start of potentially a stock moving lower. So this is really how you can utilize these tools to not only quickly gauge from your watch list which stocks are strong and continuing to trend higher, which stocks are reversing, just by looking at your watch list. I don't even have to pull up Coca-Cola. I can tell you that this is a neutral stock starting to turn lower because, as you can see, it's a score of 6, and I have yellow and red on my Coca-Cola, as opposed to on Cigna, I have a score of 8, and it's green across the board. So this allows me to use both my watch list and these trends to quickly gauge where I want to focus my attention on, so that you don't spend as much time figuring out which stocks to look at, and you spend more of your time looking at why I should look at those stocks. So here's Coca-Cola. As you can see, it's been in a bullish trend for a few weeks or so, and just today it reversed lower. So this is telling me that Coca-Cola is unlikely to continue moving higher and probably has a higher probability of moving lower. And this really helps set up the context of what strategies do I want to look at on the right-hand side. So before I move on and start taking a look at some option strategies, does anyone have a symbol that they want to take a look at? I'm happy to entertain a few symbol requests. Please type them into the chat window, and we'll pull up a symbol and just take a look at them. I want to show you guys how you can utilize this tool to quickly look at different symbols and see what's going on. So I have a request here for Amazon. I think for this one's pretty straightforward. 1 month and 6 month trend is bullish. Technical score is strong. It's a 9. So these are the strongest stocks in the market, still continuing to trend higher. As you can see, a few days ago, the 1 month trend was a little neutral, as you can see, and just turned bullish again today. So these are the types of opportunities that you typically look for bullish opportunities, is stocks that where perhaps the trend was slightly neutral and just started to turn bullish again. So Amazon in this particular case, in my opinion, is a bullish opportunity to look at. Let's look at CTRL, which is the next request. So very strong stock, technical score of 10, 1 month and 6 month trend is bullish. Just bounced off of a support level around $34. In my opinion, this is also a fairly bullish stock you should take a look at. The next one is Yandex, technical score of 3, very weak stock. However, as you can see, 1 month and 6 month trend doesn't look very bad. And notice how that trend has changed. It was bearish for quite a few months, and just recently that trend started to turn higher. And it really broke above, in my opinion, this kind of 32, 33 resistance level. So this is certainly what I would consider a bullish reversal, meaning a stock that was very bearish and weak, but started to turn around here. So for this particular trade, I think I'd be looking for some bullish opportunities. I'll take a few more before I move on to the option side. Max Linear, I've never heard of this stock before. It's got a score of 4. Technical score is very weak. However, as you can see, this is a bit of a turnaround. So if we look at a slightly longer dated chart, as you can see, this is clearly an underperforming stock through all of 2018. But over the last few months, really started to rally, and we've seen that trend indicator turn bullish here in August August 7th or so, continuing to move higher, and both the 1 month and 6 month trend turned bullish just a few days ago as it broke above this $19, $20 resistance level. So this is certainly a bullish candidate in my opinion. This is a weak stock that's starting to turn around. I'll do one more tell. Weak stock, relative score of 3. 1 month and 6 month trends are bearish. This would certainly be falling under the bearish category for me. This is certainly a sideways trade. This is not a strong trending market, so I don't have a strong conviction on this. Typically, I like to see the trend kind of move in one direction. As you can see, it's pretty choppy, and it's reflected in the colors of the trend. So I don't have a particularly strong view on this particular trade. Let's do one last one, AMD. AMD, very strong stock, a semiconductor stock. 1 month and 6 months trends are bullish. Certainly, the one thing I will say is that this is certainly what would classically be a strong bullish stock, but considering how long it's been in this bullish trend for, as you can see, this started back in May. This is probably one of the longest bull trends that I've seen in any underlying stock, and a score of 10. What this simply means to me is that, yes, this is a very bullish stock, a very strong stock, but I would say there are some downside risks, or there's certainly some risks in getting into a trade this late. This trend started back in May, so there are some risks with entering this late. So this tool not only tells you what the current trend is, but also how long it's been in, which is another factor to consider. So I'm not going to take any more requests. I want to jump onto the trading side of things, but actually I think AMD is a pretty good example here, because this is the type of stock where if you're long the markets, you feel these are stocks that you want to be in, because these are stocks that are performing with high amount of performance, but they also have, in my opinion, a lot of downside risks. This stock could easily plummet back to 24 or even lower in a short amount of time. So how do you gain that upside exposure with limited risk? And that's really where options comes in, because if you were bullish on the stock and you want to buy the stock, it costs you $3,200 to buy 100 shares of the stock, versus buying a call will only cost you $360. So only 10% of the cost of buying that upside exposure, you can get that by buying a call. And then conversely, if you buy a call vertical, it only costs you $242. So about 7 or 8% of the underlying, 6 to 7% of the underlying, to gain the same upside exposure, but limit your risk. So what happens if, let's say, AMD, which is trading at 32 right now, shoots up to 35, 36, because these are the types of returns that we're expecting when we're trading these types of high-flying stocks like AMD. So what happens if it goes up to $37? As you can see here, if you had bought the stock, you make a 14% return. If you bought the call option, you make a 38% return, which certainly looks much better compared to buying the stock. But if you bought the spread here on the right, you make a 106% return. And that's really why these spread trades here on the right is one of the more efficient ways to take these directional views with limited risk, allowing you to gain that upside exposure to AMD if it does go higher, but at the same time, if in the case that the stock moves lower, if the stock goes down, let's say the stock collapses, which there's, in my opinion, quite a bit of risk in semiconductors right now. Let's say the stock goes down to 20 bucks. What is your risk? If you had bought the stock, you're risking $1,200. So a substantial amount of risk. And this is really why with these types of high-flying stocks that have a lot of volatility, you might want to consider using options as a way to gain that directional exposure, especially this late in the game. Versus if you bought the call option, you lose $360. So about a quarter of what you would lose if you had bought or a third of what you would lose if you had bought the stock. And here on the right-hand side, you only lose $242. So about a fifth of what you would risk if you had bought the stock. So as you can see, on the upside, if you're right, you actually make a substantial amount of return higher than if you had bought the stock or the call. But if the stock moves lower, you actually risk the least amount of money. And that's really why this strategy here on the right has the highest options play score, because it provides the best risk to reward both on the upside, it's accounting for what are your rewards if you're correct, but also accounting for what are your risks if you're wrong, and really helping you quantify the true risk reward of each strategy so that you can compare them side by side and see how they perform with each other. And that's really the key of this tool, is allowing you, number one, quickly look at certain symbols and get a feel for where the stock is, right? So what were some of the other stocks that we were looking at? Sorry, index. This was in my opinion, this was a bullish turnaround. This is a stock that was quite beaten up and taken quite a beating over the last couple of months, but starting to turn around here. As you can see, that trend quality is starting to turn from red to green. So let's say I was looking at if I was bullish on the stock, buying 100 shares of that stock, again, $3,300, buying a call option, $240, so about 6 to 7% of the underlying, buying a call vertical, $195, probably about 5% of the underlying. So this is really why, these are the types of trades that allow you to take that directional view, so that if the Yandex goes back up to $36, $37, which is where it just was, as you can see here, if you had bought the stock, you make a 9% return. If you bought the call, a 66% return. If you bought the spread, 105% return. So higher returns if you are correct on this particular trade, or if your directional view on this stock does pan out. But on the same token, what happens if it goes right back to the range? What happens if it goes back down to 32 or 31? How much money do you lose? So here on the stock, you lose $289. $240 on the call, and $195 on the spread. So allowing you to take that directional view with limited amount of risk. So here, I think the risks are relatively smaller compared to the last example, like AMD, where I think you have far more downside risks, but there are still certainly risks of the downside. And this is really one of the tools that allows you to compare all different scenarios, see what your expected return is, see what your expected losses are if you're wrong, so that you can plan for a trade ahead of time. Working as a strategist with users, the one thing that I always tell over and over again to users is making sure that you have a plan before you get into a trade. And how do you plan for that? Is using this P&L simulator, so you can see what your expected losses are if you're wrong, what your expected gains are if you're right, so that you already have a feel in your mind as to what is the best case scenario and what is the worst case scenario, because that's really going to help you remove the emotional side of things from your trades once you're in them. Because once we're in that trade, we become emotionally attached, right? So especially when a trade doesn't go in our favor, we tend to wish that the stock goes back to in the direction that we expect it to. And sometimes we take additional risk, or more risk than we want to try to get back to break even. And these are some of the things that we do as humans that machines don't do. And really having the P&L simulator that tells you what your expected outcome is, what your expected losses are, to a plan for ahead of time, helps take some of that emotion out of the play, because you already know what's likely going to happen in the future, or what is the best case scenario, what is the worst case scenario. And once you've planned for it, you're more likely to follow through with that plan. So I'll go through one more example before I open this up for Q&A. Let's just look at some, one more example here. Let's see, Costco. This was actually a stock that I was looking at today. This is a very strong stock, a score of 9. 1 month and 6 month trend is 1 month trend is neutral, 6 month trend is bullish. As you can see, this stock had a very nice run since mid-April. It's turned bullish when it was trading around 187 was when the trend indicator turned bullish, and it's now trading at 231. So since April till now, it's got a tremendous run, but recently pulled back quite a bit. And this pullback here, as you can see, turned the 1 month trend neutral. So this was actually a trade I was looking at, because I think this, this stock is near a floor around 231. Perhaps it's going to start moving a little higher. I want to take a look at how to take advantage of this stock moving higher. So here, as you can see, I'm taking a look at buying 100 shares, buying a call, and buying a call option. So as you can see here, I can buy the stock for $23,000. A lot of risk here versus buying a call option cost me only $945, and buying a vertical here on the right cost me $804. So this is really allowing me to take that directional view maybe the stock might hit 245 again. That's really kind of my target here. I think it might go up to that 52-week range. So if it goes up to that 245, I can buy 100 shares of that stock, which makes me only a 3% return, or I can buy a call option, which is a 58% return, or a call spread, which is an 86% return. So this is a short-term view that I have on the stock. I think it's going to make, it's going to bounce off the support. I think it's going to go higher. And if I do, I make a nice 86% return. But what happens if the stock goes back down to the next support level, 225? How much money do I lose? So here, if I bought the stock, I lose $1,100, $945 loss if I bought the call, and an $800 loss if I bought the call vertical. So again, this is really why we want to take a look at these vertical spreads as a way to take these directional views that you have and being able to get that upside exposure with limited risk. And one of the best things that we've done with the integrations that we've done here with Regal Securities is once you've decided on a trade that you want to place, let's say this vertical here on the right is a trade that you want to make, you can hit the trade button, and that allows you to pull up that trade so that you can see exactly what the trade is, what the bid ask is, and immediately hit the preview order button to pre-fill the ticket on your platform. You don't have to fill out anything manually. You certainly don't have to click on a bunch of boxes on the option chain. It just pre-fills everything for you so that you can simply type in the limit order or market order, whatever type of order you're used to doing, hitting the verify button and allowing you to send this off for execution so that you don't have to type in anything manually. So with that concludes what I wanted to show you guys here today, how you can utilize our platform to type in any symbol using the trend and relative strength indicator to quickly gauge a directional view. And then more importantly, once you have that directional view, how can you quickly analyze some option strategies to really take advantage of your directional view, allowing you to plan for that trade ahead of time so that you can stick to that trade as you throughout the lifetime of that trade. So with that, I want to thank everyone for taking the time out this afternoon. At this point, I'll open this up for Q&A. I have a few minutes here for questions. So please, if you have any questions, please let me know or type them into the chat window. Can you guys not hear me?
I can hear you okay, Tony.
Okay, great. So I'll answer whatever questions I have here so far. If you have any questions, please type them into the chat window. I have about 7-8 minutes to answer some questions here. How do I find out what the open interest is with OptionsPlay? The answer is you don't. And the reason for that is because we don't use open interest to help us with anything. Open interest should not really be in your decision as to whether you want to trade an option, because you only need to look at the bid-ask spread, the difference between the bid and the ask price to gauge liquidity. Open interest is usually not a good gauge for liquidity. How do I get my OptionsPlay screen to fit the window so I don't have to keep sliding the display up and down? Sounds like you might have to make your screen a little bigger or smaller, rather, for that matter. Pat, you might have to call your broker, your representative, to help them kind of adjust the resolution on your monitor. But we built this in a way that it should fit on your screen all at once. Mark's just said Fang. I'm not sure what that means. Happy to try to answer that question. Maybe that was a symbol. I'm not sure. How do I manage verticals if it turns against? Great question. We actually have a separate webinar just on trading debit spreads and how to manage them. But verticals are really easy. You just, whatever you pay for them, you want to cut your losses if you've lost half the amount. And you want to take profits if you made anywhere from 75 to 100% gain on a trade. Really easy to manage, in my opinion. That's why it's one of my favorite strategies to trade. The easier to manage, the more likely you are to stick to your original plan. So your verbal analysis discussed how long the trend is going. Is that built into your scoring system, or we just have to look at the chart? It's just you have to look at the chart, because the trend itself is not, the trend itself doesn't factor into how long it's been in that trend for. And just because something's in a long trend doesn't mean that you can't trade it. It just means that there's some additional downside risk to that. So that's more of a personalized thing. That's not necessarily, in my opinion, something that's definable, if you will. How do I get the price score in 1 month columns in my watch list on the left side of my screen? it's already in there. Whatever symbols you type in, you'll automatically have a price, a score, and it'll always have the 1 month and 6 month trend. Is there a quick way to look at quality or liquidity in options? So really, if you think about options liquidity is just a function of stock liquidity. And the larger the name, the more liquid the stock is. So usually if you're looking for large cap or mid cap, that's usually a good place to start. But you really just want to look at stocks that are liquid. That's how you know the options are liquid. How do you determine the sector for a stock? Some appear obvious, others are not. I use a website, just the sector spiders. You can type in any symbol into the sector spiders, and it will tell you what the sector is. So I use this particular website, in my opinion, to figure out whether a stock is in which sector. And these are the guys that construct the sector ETFs. So these are the best guys to go to, in my opinion. How much does volume influence trend? It does not. Volume does not influence trend at all. Trend does not look at volume. Oh, FANG is a stock. So sorry, I didn't get a chance to get to FANG. If you determine the sector for a stock, I think I answered that question already. Where can get more in-depth training on OptionsPlay? Scott, if you don't mind, can you send the link to the pre-recorded webinars that we've done? Because we've done at this point probably about 10 or 11 different training sessions now on how to utilize OptionsPlay for various different option strategies. So we'll send you a link that will give you that will send you to some of the recordings, just like this particular recording will be sent out in the next couple of days. We do have a place where all the current recordings reside, and you can go there to see all the previous recordings. What are the score and the OptionsPlay mean? Are they in percent? So I just explained before, the OptionsPlay score is a risk to reward metric. It basically gives you an idea as far as how much risk you're taking versus the potential reward on each trade, and quantifies it so that you can compare different strategies side by side. It's not a percentage, it's simply just a raw score allowing you to compare one strategy to another. Mark, looks like I may have time to look up FANG here just real quick before, oh, sorry. Wrong symbol. Diamondback Energy, technical score of 7, so relatively strong stock. 1 month and 6 month trend is bullish. As you can see, it just turned bullish a couple of days ago. This is a stock that, in the context of the history of the stock, it looks like this is a stock that tends to move between a lower end of the range and higher end of the range. And looks like currently it's trading near the higher end of the range. So, in my opinion, I do think that there's limited upside here, considering how far the stock has moved over the last couple of weeks from 112 to 134 in just the span of a couple of weeks. I certainly would be weary of getting long the stock at this stage. But again, if you are bullish on the stock and you think it's going to continue moving higher, I think the best way to play this is by using a vertical, because you're limiting your risk, so that if the stock pulls back down to 120, 115, you're limited to the amount of money you have at risk by trading that vertical versus buying that stock, or even just buying that outright call. So with that, I think that's all the questions here, and I think we have to wrap up here. So I just want to thank everyone for taking the time out this afternoon. We just posted the link to all of the recordings in the chat window. So if you want to look at some of the other in-depth training that we've done for other trading strategies, please click on that link, and that will get you to all the previously recorded webinars. So thank you everyone for taking the time out this afternoon. I hope you guys find this useful, and if you have any questions, please send them to your customer representative, and they'll be able to forward that back to us.
Yes, thank you, Tony. Good stuff as always, and thanks to everyone for registering and attending and all the great questions. If you have any more questions, just reach out to the customer service team of your broker, and we'll help you address that. And as far as upcoming webinars, we will be having them coming up, and we'll let you know when the next date is. So be on the lookout in your email. We don't have the date locked in yet, but we will soon. So be on the lookout for that. But again, if you have any questions, please reach out to your customer support team of your broker. So thanks again, everyone. Appreciate your attendance and asking all the great questions. And have a great rest of the day. Thank you. Bye-bye.